And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
Zoe.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is called I Heart BJ, Universal Studios Beijing. And the whole reason behind the name, first of all, it's catchy, so I'm hoping that's why you're listening.
I love BJ.
Second of all, at like all these tourist attractions in Beijing, especially at the Great Wall, they have all this merchandise, these t-shirts that say like I Heart BJ on it. Because really Beijing is like two words in Chinese, in Mandarin, even though we kind of always write it as one word in the English language. So we kind of thought it was funny that it was on all the merchandise. And now it is on our episode title.
The way it should really be spelled in like English is with a capital J, like have it be two words, like Beijing, which is why so much of the Western stuff from Beijing is abbreviated with BJ. And that includes Universal. So like their app icon, it just says USBJ on it.
Funny because I feel like in the US we'll always refer to it as like USB.
Yeah.
But the more you know. And so today we'll be talking about, this is actually a two-part kind of like episode, but we're doing one episode now and then one episode next week. We went to Beijing recently, kind of on a whim, kind of last minute. We decided to go to Beijing. The flights looked good, and we figured since we couldn't add Beijing to our biggest trip, which is coming up, probably when you're listening to this, we're already like on our way to China. And so we figured, well, if we can do it separately for like a weekend, we'll do a weekend trip to Universal Beijing. And that just turned into like a Beijing trip in general. And we did a bunch of cool stuff. We went to the Summer Palace, Tiananmen Square, Forbidden City, Jingshan Park, I forgot what it was called. Jinshan Park, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And
the
Temple of Heaven. We went to the Summer Palace, which I may have already said.
That one you always say first because it was your favorite.
Because it was a favorite. I love Summer Palace. And we did some other stuff, which we'll talk about mostly in the next episode, including Happy Valley Beijing. But this episode is all about our day at Universal Studios Beijing, a very expensive theme park. And we'll be just kind of discussing it.
It's a fascinating
and like the what is it, the
good, the bad, and the ugly.
That format.
That was the original title of this episode, but we thought USBJ was funnier. Like, I love BJ.
Yeah, I heard BJ.
I was like, we need to run with this whole BJ thing because it's too good.
And we're actually going to go in reverse orders. We're going to start with the ugly, then go to the bad, then go to the good.
Are we going to do a tour around the park first? Or do we want to just dive
and then do the tour
ugly?
later? I thought we could do the tour later because I feel like the most of our disappointments happen early in the day. So I feel like if we're going to just kind of start with the bad and then go to the good, it'll be also a more natural progression.
A compliment sandwich where we talk about the
I know
park
we did talk about that first.
and like start on a high note of like.
What if we started with the good and then went to the bad, then with the ugly, and then we did the tour? What if we did actually do the regular format? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
But I want to get the ugly off my chest. So
then to start with the ugly.
I'm just gonna
guys, I to get ugly
we're just gonna like put this place on blast.
So yeah, like break her down so we can build them up. That's what we're gonna do.
I guess you're right. I mean, our day did really start.
The day
out.
was kind of a shit show,
like rocky. Although technically, the first aspect of the resort, which was getting there via metro and walking through City Walk to the entrance, that was
pretty smooth. There wasn't like any lines
on the list
to get
of good things. Just because the city set up like the access for this park.
They'll let the distance from the
solid.
city not surprise you because like you think, oh, it's on like two metro lines. It's on Metro Line 1 and Metro Line 7. And you're like, oh, this is cute. You know, like it shouldn't be that terrible, especially because the last transfer point is approximately like 10 stations before you even get to USB or USBJ.
USBJ.
But really, it takes a good minute to get there. It's like 27.
Yeah.
So we were in the middle of the center. Like we were in the middle of the city, right by Tiananmen Square.
Once we got to line 1, it was like an hour, over an hour.
Yeah, we got to line 1. Did we take? No, I think we took line 7 actually, didn't we?
Oh yeah, you're right.
We took line 7.
That one's closer.
It was like 27 stops total, which you think, okay, it's not bad because it stops so often.
But
easy.
It's just
easy,
tedious.
but it does take a minute to get to the park. So give yourself maybe like 30 more minutes than you think you need.
Definitely disassociate because if you focus on how long it's taking, it's going to feel like it takes forever.
Because I feel like everything in Beijing is kind of close, but then this park is not close.
No.
So like you really like you're on that metro.
And it's funny because Happy Valley is
on the same
way.
metro, but then you're still like 30-40 minutes from Universal.
You pass directly underneath Happy Valley and the Happy Valley station. It's like halfway to Universal. And when you get to Happy Valley, you think like, wow, I still have another 45 minutes before we get to Universal
Yeah,
Studios.
maybe a little bit less, maybe like 30 minutes. Time to think about it. But either way, you're not that close. Either way, so knowing that, when you get to the train station, it's all really cute. But let's just kind of, we're not going to go in chronological order. We're just going to start with the ugly, man. Like, Alexander, throw him at it.
Although the next chronological thing that happened was like the first few ugly things all happened in quick succession. The entrance plaza for the park like has some nice landscaping, but the hotel itself looks weirdly flat. And the hotel, it's like Disneyland Paris, so the hotel is the entrance plaza, and it just felt kind of sterile. Like it wasn't that detailed. It looks nice from far away, and you get up close to it, and it just looks kind of bare. Like there's not really a lot of flourish. Like there's not a lot of just not a lot happening. There's not a lot of depth.
It's kind of
to
sterile. I think my problem is that, of course, the Universal Studios Grand Hotel is themed to classic Hollywood architecture and kind of like that the warm tones and stuff, which is all really great. But it's lacking all of the cool Art Deco.
It just
like the whole thing is Art Deco inspired, but then there's the Art Deco is like lacking significantly. And when you're at the entrance, it's like that's the entrance. You stare at the building, especially in the lines we're in. You look at it forever. And it's like, wow, it's just kind of flat. Like, there's not much to it.
There's not a lot of embellishments. There's not a lot of texture. The materials don't look like... It's not like they made stuff out of stone or anything. It's just very... It's just, a lot of plaster and stuff. It looks kind of like... It almost looks fake on purpose. Like a studio set level fake. And it's fine. It's whatever. You get in the park. You're waiting in line to go through the entrance. And... this wasn't even on the list, but the fact that they don't let people into Hollywood area and let people rope drop the ride areas from inside the park is kind of odd. Like, they really corral every single person outside of the park.
We got to the park before park opened. A little later than we wanted to because the metro took significantly longer, I think, than we expected. But we still got there before opening, and we were in line before the opening. And the line, you get to City Walk, and then you cross over into the giant plaza that's also the park entrance in the hotel, right? And then they split you up in two groups. Like, either you go to the right or go to the left. And then there's these kind of like switchbacks to the gardens they built. They're wide. There's thousands of people there. Like, it was honestly kind of shocking. And then it splits up into, like, 6 smaller switchbacks. And then those feed into, like, 3 gates each to get into the park. So it's kind of like this distribution system where they just, like, spread out the crowds as much as they can to hold them all into, like, traffic patterns, which is fine. But what I'm getting at is that it's... What am I getting at? I used to love it.
It's just slow and
it's so slow, yeah. So yeah, people should just be letting it earlier. Because
none of the rides need to open on time if it's going to take so long for people to get into the park. Like, it really just doesn't make sense.
Because I think the problem was we got there before park opened. I think it took us 45 minutes to get in?
Yeah, it took like 45 minutes.
At least 4 minutes to get in. And that was like continuously trying to get through the queues just to get into the park.
It would just beseech them to let people into the entrance plaza first and like shop for merch, get coffee, like whatever.
Yeah, there's a Peace Coffee there, there's services there.
And then when the park is officially open, everybody's in, the paperwork's done, you drop because it's not the easiest.
And for anyone bringing up all the hotel guests have prior access to the park, which we get, there must be a way for you to set off, or like funnel the resort guests into a lane that goes through the land just to get into the park earlier, because it was just too chaotic getting into the park. There should be some sort of holding pen, even if it's one side of the street, that's a holding pen, just for the people that aren't resort guests. And then when you get to the actual gates, everything in China is super passport heavy. Like, you cannot go anywhere without having either your international passport or your Chinese identification card on you. Yeah. Which is just China, like we know. But in order to go into the park, everyone, especially if you're international, but everyone has to scan their ID on this plate, on this glass plate. And it's not as quick as you thought it would be. So for my passport, it took a quick second, but I have this hard plastic European passport. So eventually it read the document and it would just cross-reference in the system that I had purchased a ticket with that document number on there. So when you purchase your ticket, you put on your passport number, and then the system will reference your passport with that number and let you in. In that face, scan your face. So your face needs to match your passport's face, and then it's kind of complicated. And then you get in. It's a lot of preamble buying the tickets, and then it's kind of smooth when you're there. But it did take a good 30 seconds for me to get in before the system recognized my face and my passport and everything, and then opened the gate for me. And for Alex, it took a good minute.
Yeah.
It took a good minute to get in.
To say that, like, if you've got people who if you need to scan identification to get into the park and then do, like, the biometric referencing with the face and stuff, like, all of this should just be done for people before the park is open somehow.
Yeah, because
other parks manage.
It takes a while to get people in, which is why the queues were so slow.
It's not that hard to do this for people, so I don't know why they're not doing it, aside from the fact that it's just Universal, and it's a typical of Universal to be kind of sloppy with the whole approach to crowd control.
I think the system works, but the problem is just that it takes so long to get people in that this needs to be a step, like Alice kind of said, before you enter the park. It needs to be like almost like an additional step where you do your face scan, you reference your ticket, and then you wait somewhere to go into the park. And then you can get people in quicker. But this whole process just took too long.
And as we were doing all of this, the whole process, there was a very short and obnoxious music loop that was playing.
So short.
It was all City Walk, the entrance plaza for the hotel, the turnstiles.
All of Hollywood.
And Hollywood was this one very short music loop that was playing like Despacito.
It was Despacito.
And
it was
Waka Waka by Shakira.
Yeah.
That one Demi Lovato song that is all over Europe and Asia.
Really don't want to love anymore. Fight anymore.
But Americans have never heard it. But it's like this Demi Lovato song that we've heard.
Which in the beginning we're like walking over to the park. We're like, what is this soundtrack? Because you're used to like the whole studio thing. It's kind of like the music sound scores from like the like movies,
theatrical
right?
music.
And all this was like this 2009, 2010 like capsule of music.
Very irrelevant.
They were able to license in China for use or whatever.
And like they're doing their spring festival thing.
It could have been related to that.
It's not like a Mardi Gras event or something of major substance. There was no evidence of events of any kind happening in the park aside from the entrance plaza, which had like characters and spring themed costumes. So that's about it. But we think that's what this music loop was for, and it was like a special.
I'm hoping it's what it's for. I'm hoping it wasn't like that all year round.
Really brutal.
It was brutal, especially because it took us 45 minutes to get in. So we heard the same music over and over, and we're like, and it's thumping loud. It's trying to hype up the crowd, but the crowd isn't moving.
Yeah,
we're all stuck in these endless switchbacks trying to get to the park entrance. There is very little information at all. Like, they should at least have some screens up explaining what the process is, because I feel like nobody knew what was going on. You kind of just like split up into 3 queues and then into more queues, and then like they hold the queue and then they let people into more switchbacks. Like, there was a system, but nobody knew what the system was except for people that worked there, if that makes kind of sense. Sometimes it's better to leave people in the unknown so they don't try to get an advantage and try to get into a shorter queue. I get that aspect, but at the same time, it was like music blaring, we weren't actually moving, people were trying to like pass you, and there were some like rude international tourists from a region I won't mention that were like really pushing themselves past everyone. It was like honestly like a terrible experience. There was no staff around until you got to the very front of the line. There was no one around.
I mean, we did go on a Saturday, but it was weird that like later,
it wasn't a holiday Saturday.
Later in the day, you would find that the midways were almost empty, with the exception of Wizarding World, because everyone was in line for something. It's not like a normal theme park experience where there's just people milling around. Everybody shows up for this park at open, and then that's it. Because later in the day, when we went back to get coffee on Main Street, or Hollywood Boulevard, rather, it was deserted.
Like 3 hours after the park opened, it was deserted. Yeah.
And then another thing, because it's a lot of ugly real early. This was actually, I don't know if this was on the bad list or the ugly list, but it was like, this park is actually not very well organized. And the first thing we did was make our way to Jurassic Flyers. And in doing so, like, we headed toward the attraction, but it was not a straightforward or easily sought out attraction. And we just kind of had to guess. Like, there wasn't signs. There would be like a fork in the midway, and there was no signage to like clarify which direction the entrance to something was. And like, this is Universal Studios. Like, it should be a little more user friendly than that. I know, like, people get lost at Islands of Adventure, like trying to find the exit, and they wind up in like the little Popeyes plaza and stuff. But this park just seems really unnecessarily complicated to navigate, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But We had an early taste of that, just trying to take the shortest path from the entrance to Jurassic Flyer was just like a lot more challenging than it should have been.
Yeah, then there were directional signs, but they were just not pointing at anything you wanted to go to. It was weird. Like, it would only point at Jurassic World to ride, and then even though Flyers are right overhead, it would not tell you where to go for Flyers. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And we weren't the only ones confused, by the way, because everyone was over there like, where do we go? Where do we go? Like, everyone's trying to go to Flyers.
We were going to follow the crowd, but like nobody knew where to go.
Yeah.
It was just not.
Speaking of Jurassic Flyer,
this was the ugliest of ugly things.
Yeah, it was the
things were already ugly
that they had installed for the ride, which were installed later. The word out there is kind of unclear. Like either the Chinese government made them add it later, or it was just like kind of like an oversight, and they should have been added all along, and then they didn't pass inspection. We don't exactly know why they were added later, but there's a lot of ride that is with these giant metal catwalks that you cannot actually see below you for most of the ride.
Yeah, there's like, you're supposed to be like hovering over, and like the outdoor portions are a little better.
Yeah, outdoor portions are actually really
but like
not bad.
It's especially bad inside the indoor, like the aviary is what they call the indoor section of Jurassic, where it's like you're definitely supposed to be floating over the play areas and stuff and the whole bit, but you're actually just hovering just a few feet above a giant catwalk.
It's just sad because you can actually go pretty fast. I mean, I didn't find it too much. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't find it too much of a detractor, but it is ugly.
It wasn't a huge distraction, but it was just not. It's obvious that the ride is not operating the way it was designed or intended, and it was probably so cool and was so much better without the catwalk. So it's just a shame that like
another problem with Jurassic Flyers is that the queue is terrible. I mean, it is
terrible and it's long. And they didn't even build enough. Like, we stood in line, so we get in line. It says 80 minutes. We're like, okay, hopefully that's an exaggeration. It said 45 minutes when we
It said 45 minutes when we got in the park. On the app, it said 45 because we had, like, the little app, right? Yeah. And then we get to the ride and it's 80. We're like, all right.
Whatever. We're going to bite the bullet. Hopefully it'll be less.
So we get the locker, which is face recognition locker. Pretty decent system. And so we get in line, and then the first thing you do is you kind of have a little bit of a switchback inside, and then you go outside the aviary, and there's like an outside queue, which looks decent. Yeah. And you can kind of see the ride go by, and it's honestly not terrible.
They had to add extra queue, like out of a fire exit, and use like makeshift. Yeah,
there's like these like the crowd control metal barricades.
Really,
they use those.
Like they really underestimated for all the trouble that they went through getting this ride open and building the catwalks and stuff. I guess it was worth it because this ride gets lines like nobody's business. And it's not that great. Like, it's a cute ride.
But it's not all that.
But it routinely is a 2-hour wait.
So then we wait through the outside part and we get inside. And by the time we get back inside, it's been 45 minutes. I'm telling Alex, hey, dude, there's no way that in 35 minutes we're going to be at the station because I'm looking inside this building. And there is this queue and switchbacks forever. Like, the aviary is practically just like one giant queue building. Hate to say it.
Yeah.
Not even like a queue. It's just like switchbacks after switchbacks after switchbacks.
It's not even attractive.
And we're moving slowly. And like, the more I look, the more I see another room of switchbacks hidden in the distance. And I'm like, this is impossible. But, you know, it's at 80 minutes. And generally speaking, theme parks like Disney and Universal have the technology, have the experience to somewhat accurately find out what a queue time is. Yeah. The ride didn't go down at any point.
And we were like, if the ride breaks down or if it's like, if it jumps up right after we got in line. But
that's one thing.
The line had been posted at an 80-minute wait.
For the first 45 minutes.
45 minutes that we were in line.
Then it went to 90.
Then it went to 90.
We're like, all right.
We're like, okay, so it might be 90.
Also, like I was telling Alex when we were there, like a 25% like difference in the wait time, like I can live with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we go through the queue, terrible theming. Like, I mean, it's like slap stuff together
really
last minute.
Cheap. It was almost
like cheaper than like an IKEA whatever, right?
I want to know.
It was terrible.
I need to look back at like, did they convert some of this back? Like, it almost felt like we were going backstage.
It felt like they didn't have enough queue space, like, and then they took out a wall and built more queue space.
And then they added more queue, and then like hastily added alleged theming. To like, we're in a laboratory.
Well, we're in a laboratory, but also a break room, but also like a medical office.
And also, there's like medical equipment, but there's also lots of plants. Like, we're also in a greenhouse. Like, it's and the props were not even.
No,
they weren't
it was
cute.
the cheapest shit. Like, it's like high school science.
It was weird. It was like paper cups glued to a table in the cafeteria. Like, it was just weird.
And another problem was it was so densely packed in there with these switchbacks. I mean, there was thousands of people waiting in there.
It was hot and claustrophobic.
And it was hot, and there was no airflow. I mean, we got to the point where we were in like the furthest away room. At this point, we had been waiting for almost 2 hours, even though the wait said 80 minutes. Almost 2 hours. So we're 40 minutes over.
The posted wait time climbed up to 100, but it never exceeded 100.
Even though it was
in grand total of 150 minutes, you guys. We waited 2.5 hours for a line that allegedly
was supposed to be
an hour and a half.
Yeah, so
tops.
And so we waited all that, and so but I started feeling nauseous after one point because it was so hot. It wasn't even summer. Like the weather outside was perfect. We wore long pants. Like it wasn't that hot out.
And there were parts of the queue that were there was water damage. There was paint peeling.
There was black
mold on the floor.
It was honestly
and the ceiling.
really trash. Like was not a good
felt
look.
Like we were in a fake Universal Beijing. Like
so this is not
in a Chinese
first
park.
time that it felt like a Chinese knockoff park or like a Chinese regional park, but that was like our first experience.
It was alarming.
We took pictures and maybe we'll post them.
We have some pretty incriminating.
Maybe we'll do like a little photo carousel that comes with this episode on Facebook and Instagram, so that way you guys can reference it.
Some of the stuff in the queue has to be like seen to be believed. How bad it is in terms of just like execution and upkeep.
And then we rode the ride, and the ride was actually pretty fun.
We got the ride. The ride was cute. I mean, I would have waited.
So it wasn't cute, was the wait.
I would have comfortably waited half an hour for that, but it's like, it is what it is. By the time we got off the ride, it was 1:00. So we had been in the park for 3 hours, or the park had been open for 3 hours, and all we had done was like wait through the swaths of people to get into the park,
go straight to this ride, and wait 2.5 hours
and
for
wait
it,
in a grossly inaccurate queue. Queue time prediction. Like, I don't care. Like, if the line is as long as it is, like, whatever. But just don't lie about it. Like,
I know, and like clearly it was so far off that like they should have just pumped up the way.
It's not even close.
You should always be overestimating.
Yeah.
If anything, to sell frickin' individual fast pass or whatever.
It should have been posted somewhere along the way. Probably should have posted like a 3-hour queue, just to like accommodate things like breakdowns and influxes of Express Pass.
Yeah, it was bad.
But so after we rode the ride, we were like, okay, let's regroup because like it was a special kind of misery. We went back to the main entrance and we bought some Express Pass. We had to go to guest services to do this because the only way to buy Express Pass is through the app.
Or through the mini app. So you need, if we're going to go to China, you're going to have Alipay or WeChat Pay. You're going to have it on your phone.
There's no way around it.
So there's mini apps that are built into those two platforms because they're massive platforms in China. So one of them is the Alipay app that we use. But then the one you can download for like the Western platforms, like Android, Google Play, whatever, like for the US users, which is pretty nicely optimized. Like we were able to use it all over China, and you can just like scan, like you can translate in the app because everything is in Mandarin. But you can translate within the app. Anyway, so our version of Alipay and our version of the mini app for Universal Studios Beijing allowed to purchase every single thing under the sun, including dining packages and whatever, except for Express Pass. So we had to go and like get it physically done at guest services. Luckily, they still had some available. I want to talk about it a little bit later, though. I want to just focus on all the ugly stuff first. Okay. But anyway, we were forced to buy Express Pass to get on stuff because it wasn't even that busy. It was just that the crowd control, the park management, operationally, it felt like we were at a typical Chinese park where like operations were just not it.
Yeah.
And clearly they were like, we were scarred. We were like, okay, so if this line says 90 minutes and we waited like 2.5 hours, what's the next line? Yeah. Like, how wrong are they on the next line?
We were traumatized.
Which we did learn in several occasions that they were very underestimated. We waited, like, way longer. We'll talk about that. But another thing, staying with the ugly, our next bullet point is the Kung Fu Panda show building.
I think, really, one of the biggest things that this park struggles with is sight lines and juxtaposing things that are meant to be seen with things that are not meant to be seen. And I think a lot of people have seen, like, I think photographs of their Harry Potter stuff have gone viral because it looks so bad. Like the Hogwarts castle sandwiched between two sides of a massive exposed show building. And pictures really don't do it justice because it really does look incredibly terrible. And And then the Kung Fu Panda area, which is a completely enclosed area, is also very much is guilty of this, except that they painted a mural on the side of the warehouse that the area is in, and there's some cute landscaping leading up to it, but it all feels cheap and reactionary. It should be rock work. It should be something that is not just a painted warehouse. Or just the fuck ton of trees or something. Trees. It's just a little too apparent that we're going into a building, and it's not like, even though this is Universal Studios, and like studio-themed amusement parks have a history of, you know, relying very heavily, like really leaning on the whole soundstage theme, but none of these buildings are themed to sound stages.
Yeah, because the theme of the park is more of like an Islands of Adventure kind of theme, where like you enter through Hollywood and then into the movies, where everything is like realistic, you know, and it's not
exactly.
Yeah, it's not like that because the building's so exposed. And so we already mentioned Forbidden Journey's building, and we already mentioned Kung Fu Panda's building, but then there's a moment where you leave Kung Fu Panda and you walk towards Metro Base. So you're leaving on, I believe it's the south side of the park, if that's correct, towards the south side.
Yeah.
And you cannot even get to Jurassic World from here, despite being inches away from Jurassic World, which is kind of frustrating. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But then you are facing, so you leave Kung Fu Panda and you face a giant show building, and it's just a white building, and that's all you see. There is nothing to cover it up, not even like a bigger tree. Mm-hmm. They installed some lanterns later to, I think, try and help with cover it a little bit, but the damage is done. There needs to be at least, or put a Jurassic World logo on there to make it seem like you're looking at something, you know, because at the end of the day, like I'm thinking about Walt Disney Studios in Paris and how the show building for the Adventure Assemble roller coaster is kind of massive, and really you can see it from like the train in Disney Village. But they just put like a really clean Avengers logo on it. Yeah. Okay, you know what it is. Done. Yeah. But now it looks like you're looking at some like backstage you're not supposed to see. It looks weird.
At least inside of the Jurassic. So the Jurassic World show building is a huge ride show building that is in the dead center of the park. There is midway all around it. And only from the Jurassic World area do they bother to make the building look like it's part of a facility. It has an industrial look to it, and from the Jurassic World area, it's like, okay, this is a facility related to Jurassic World, whatever. But man, if you're looking at it from like anywhere else, Kung Fu Panda area, Water World, like it's just a building. And it's kind
of omnipresent. Yeah. But like they should at least put something on it so you know.
It's just this glaring.
I know. It just feels like we're not supposed to see it. You know?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. It's like they were like, look at these beautiful trees, and it's like the trees are obscuring something that is still visible, but then they plant trees there that they want you to see and put lanterns and decorations in front of things. They paint a mural on a building that you're not supposed to see, but then they put a mural on it to cover it up.
I still like the mural better than the opposite direction where you just face a blank building that's completely backstage. Like at least they tried with Kung Fu Panda. It doesn't look good, but it looks better than the other two buildings. I'll say that. It
does look better than Harry Potter.
And Jurassic World.
The Jurassic World show building.
And then Ugly is mostly actually focused on just appearance things. Another thing that was really ugly is the station for the Decepticoaster. Yeah. It's like a knockoff station for Hulk. I mean, first of all, they cloned the station into every detail. Just the colors are different. Really awkward to me. Yeah. Because even when you leave, it has that weird, like, triangular walkway out to the photo area.
Suspended zigzag with, like, the cheese grater walls. Like,
I mean, like, literally
it's
copied.
All there. But
like,
I really felt like I was in a, like, Twilight Zone version of Hulk where the infrastructure was there, but it was painted a solid color, no embellishments. It really did feel like you remember when we went to World Joyland, and like World Joyland is famous for being like an Islands of Adventure knockoff, and then they've got their B&M flying coaster that is supposed to be like the Marvel Superhero Island area with like the cartoon characters and stuff. I had flashbacks to that, and I'm like, you know, this is almost as bad as World Joyland. This, for whatever reason, this actual Universal Studios theme park feels like a cheap imitation of Islands of Adventure.
It was hella sterile, and then they had those three like big cylinders from the ceiling, like Hulk has, with blue lights in them, but there was like no like theming on them.
Yeah, they were just there. And
then walking up to it, it was like this bridge that goes over a bunch of queue downstairs. The queue is terrible. Like it's just a bunch. It's miserable. But you know, Universal doesn't have good switchback queues to begin with.
The only good thing about this queue is Decepticoaster does not get lines. That ride has good. It has good capacity. They run it pretty well relative to some of the other operational issues in this park. Decepticoaster is a pretty smooth operation. We got bad luck though because we got in line for it, and
So
then
10 minutes.
they took a train off
And we ended up waiting 35 minutes.
in the middle of the day.
And there's nobody even
Just
there.
took a train off, and I'm like, come on, guys.
Typical.
But yeah, so the queue being ugly on Decepticoaster is at least a little less of a sting because you're not really seeing it much. But the station being ugly and frankly unfinished looking, when the station is really where a majority of your wait is going to happen on Decepticoaster because the line's technically not very long, that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the station is not a focal point of the attraction experience. Instead, it's honestly the ugliest part of the queue, in my opinion, and the part of the queue that you're probably going to be looking at the most. So,
But the good news
that's
is
a huge misfire.
that was it for the ugly parts. And so now we're moving on to the bad. And we already kind of discussed some of the bad because, ugly, bad, they kind of blend.
Yeah.
But ugly, we really wanted to more focus on appearance
Aesthetic.
and sounds
Yeah.
and sights. And that is more of like, all right, this is like a product problem.
Yeah.
So we're going to start right with the value of the product, I guess, because
Not a good value.
it's not a good value. So first of all, Beijing is probably the most expensive city in China. As far as our tour guide from the Great Wall was concerned, Beijing is the most expensive city in China because the government's based there, government officials, lots of money, lots of people that have money live in Beijing. So it is definitely like, and so is Shanghai Disney. It's an upper class experience for China. Like you need to have money to go. But even for Western standards, I mean, I think Universal Studios, Hollywood and Universal Studios, Florida and stuff are honestly overpriced. I think that the product is, maybe Hollywood's getting better now, but the pricing is, for me, still kind of steep for what you get for the product. And I really felt that for Beijing, it was really steep because China is, generally speaking, not as expensive. And you go to China and, stuff is significantly more affordable. And that includes your, you can stay at luxury hotels for cheaper. There's public transit cheaper. Basic life quality stuff like groceries, everything is cheaper, and that's because the average income is so much lower in China. So for us, we usually are able to spend a trip in China feeling like, almost like we always say, like living like kings, because like we don't spend a lot of money and we're getting a great value for stuff. But this park was not one of them. Like it was not.
Yeah. Even the express passes that we bought, this kind of segues nicely into our next bullet point. The next issue, the biggest issue, would be just the general user unfriendliness, especially compared to, I think it's pretty much impossible not to compare this resort and its product to Shanghai Disney.
Should we talk prices? Should we mention a little bit of how much you paid?
Absolutely.
So let me pull up my Alipay and you pull up how much you paid and then translate that real quick. Because what we did, let's see if I can see my transaction history here. Because we did do a lot of transactions on...
We bought, when we went back to the entrance of the park to get express passes that we were unable to attain ourselves because of the general user unfriendliness of this whole resort setup for non-Chinese folks. I mean, Universal, for a resort company that claims to have their eyes on the world and like global domination, like they really don't have this resort set up as if they expect people from outside of China to come. Unlike Shanghai Disney, where like it's a breeze to, and it has been a breeze. Like our Shanghai Disney visits since, shortly after the park opened have always been easy, user-friendly. Universal Beijing has been open for 3 years, and they run that place like they don't expect people to go unless they are from China.
So I pulled up our first transaction. So just the tickets were 1,100 yuan, and that's 151 in dollars. So it's about 70.
Yeah,
so it's actually about 76 a person. It's 152. So it's 76 per person, which I will say is not crazy.
Not terrible.
It's still a little bit more than Shanghai Disney, but I will say that I find Shanghai Disney a much superior product.
Much superior.
But okay, we're in Beijing. It's more expensive. That's okay, whatever. But everything in the park was so expensive. It was kind of ridiculous. So then we ended up getting our fast passes.
We got two. So we get to guest services, and they tell us that the express pass bundles are sold out, and we're like, okay, crap. But they're like, well, you can buy individual ones. And what's funny is the individual express passes are actually a better value. This goes into the whole like the park is not being operated optimally, because not only are they not giving accurate queue times, which would help with express pass sales. Like it's definitely in a park's interest to provide accurate queues or even inflate the queues if they are trying to sell more of these individual express passes. And then also, they sell bundles of like 3 express passes that let you choose like 2 really good rides and 1 kind of booger ride.
Yeah, it's like Forbidden Journey, Jurassic World, and
Loop-de-doop-de or whatever.
Yeah, or like or a carousel, whatever,
or
like
whatever,
something
some goofy,
super lame,
something that does not get a line.
But that then averages to paying 200 yuan per ride.
Yeah,
which includes 200 yuan for like a flat ride, which is absurd.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is we bought 2 because they no longer had any packages left. So we bought 2 individual.
For Harry Potter.
Express passes for Harry Potter and 2 for Jurassic World, because those were the 2 e-tickets with the craziest lines, and we had to get those in.
And they were 200 yuan each.
Yeah, so, and Universal Beijing, unlike a lot of other places in Beijing, they charge a transaction fee for every single transaction, and this is not an international currency transaction fee, because we have credit cards that we don't have an international
transaction fee or anything.
It's just transaction fees that Universal implies, and that we haven't had it pretty much anywhere else in China.
Yeah.
So that is also something to note. It's not a lot, but it was 24 extra yuan on this transaction, for example. So our transaction rate there was 117. It fluctuates a little bit. Right now, it would have been 114. USD, like the currency fluctuates a lot for yuans. It's not as stable as dollars are.
So what did we pay for the 4?
I would say, for the 4 is about 120 euros, $120. So $120 means that we paid 60 per ride. We paid $30 per ride to skip the queue.
Per ride per
60
person.
$60 together. That's a lot of money.
And at Shanghai Disney, for example, they will sell you packages that are
6 rides.
Like 6 rides, $20 each USD.
Yeah, so it's
less than $20.
So it's significantly cheaper to buy like a whole Premier Access set of rides, or just per ride at Shanghai Disney. And again, we're kind of using Shanghai Disney as a comparison here because it really is Shanghai Disney versus Universal Beijing in the Western scheme. Of course, Chimelong Ocean Kingdom was included, but they operate so differently, you can't really lump them in. I feel like the products and the way that the parks are operated and set up a payment and stuff is very similar between Universal Beijing and Disney in Shanghai, but it's just that Universal just costs significantly more.
Plus, we're like shopping our Shanghai Disney visit right now. We're going
in like a week.
Like a week,
and it is. Yeah. By the time you listen to this, we'll probably be there.
There's a 6 attraction Premier Access package that you can buy that comes out to like $18.50 per ride per person. But it's like 6 really good rides, like things that get long lines or things that are really popular, and it's just like an excellent value. It's not like they're making you buy an express pass for Dumbo or something in this package. It's like all stuff that we want to ride and care about. So it's just a better consumer value overall.
And again, to get express pass, we had to go through the customer service because our Alipay version wouldn't allow us to buy them. Like they didn't even exist on our purchase side of things. So that's another thing that we want to kind of talk about. Like it's this resort is incredibly set up for the Chinese visitor. We get it. We saw very few international visitors. Mm-hmm. In fact, we saw very few. We saw a couple Middle Easterners, and I think that was about it. We saw a couple Brits, but generally speaking, if we saw them, they were usually mixed families. I think we talked about it. It's like mixed families were like
families that have
Chinese descent. So they're probably visiting family or like visiting China. Like I think we were the only tourists that were just like. Our demographic on our own, and that was especially true with the Great Wall.
We were definitely the only Americans we saw at Universal Studios Beijing.
And so we get that it's not meant for us. However, it is not very user-friendly. So first of all, Android phones using Google Play, so any phone using Google Play, because of the Google not being allowed in the Great Chinese Firewall, you cannot download there's no Universal Beijing app anymore for Google Play, which there used to be in the very beginning. Yeah. We had it. Yeah. But it's no longer there. So then you're forced to use Alipay, which is fine, and use the app within Alipay, which is fine. But the problem is you have to buy everything in there, and everything is in Mandarin, so you have to use the translator function. Nothing translates clean from Mandarin to English. This doesn't exist. No. Mandarin is such a different language that nothing translates clean to English, and then you have to purchase your tickets. So then it becomes a thing where like the dates and the map, it's all like, in your calendar are not aligned properly. So you're hoping you're buying it for like the right Wednesday because like the Wednesday will have like the wrong date on it. Yeah. And then you buy it, and then you have to put in your document ID, which really just means your passport number. It's sort of like learning how to purchase something, which you can't even show up without having it purchased. Then it keeps telling you, you have to reserve a day. But then you have to go and like dig deep in the mini app and find out that your ticket type actually doesn't require a reservation for the day because you have a date-specific ticket. But it's all in Mandarin only, and it's not user-friendly whatsoever. Then you show up, and you're just hoping they can put in information right. So that when you scan your passport at an unmanned machine, that the park says, great job, we found your ticket in the system, you're allowed in.
I did not know how that was going to go.
That's your face work. We were ready to have to go to customer service and deal with that whole shebang and be like, look, I have proof of my Alipay, I have my tickets, I have my purchase order in Mandarin pulled up on Alipay, even though you can't use that to get into the park because everything is based on your passport. You have to scan your passport. So that was kind of unfriendly. And then again, we couldn't even purchase some aspects of it. So the whole experience for a Westerner is super unfriendly.
Some information just simply isn't there. There was no evidence anywhere on the internet that they sold individual Express Pass also.
At the park, yeah.
They at all, in general. Because the only evidence that we could find, whether it was websites and blogs, YouTube, people who live in China, was that they only came in packages. So when they told us they were out of the packages, but they could sell us individual.
I'm not 100% sure about that, but I feel like I may have seen it somewhere.
I couldn't find anything that
I don't remember. It's kind of
I couldn't find any menus, certainly not on the website. And then any other...
Well, yeah, I think the problem with the website is you go to the Universal Beijing website, and even though there's an English interface for it, it sends you directly to the app. It says, download the app for this, download the app for that. So then you have your mini app, right? You can also use a mini app that we did. But then, again, the information on there is so, wildly inaccurate or wildly inaccessible that it just makes it kind of hard.
For what it's worth, it's just there's this option of individual Express Pass that was either not advertised or extremely difficult to find unless you just happen to be using the Chinese version of the app. So that, it's just a lot of obstacles. You jump through a lot of hoops.
Which, it's kind of fine, but we were just kind of nervous, going in, and we are, I don't want to call us, well-traveled, but we've traveled. This is not our first time in China. We've done the whole thing, and we're about to go back. So it's the fact that we were kind of struggling to even make sure we did it right was kind of frustrating a little bit, especially at the price point.
Especially it being Universal Studios.
It's a big
some
Western
random
company.
Chinese park, then you go in with expectations that it will be a challenge.
You figure it out. You have Trip, you have Alipay, there's ways to get in.
Universal Studios, regardless of where it's located, should never be this complicated.
And especially if you compare it to the competitor, which may not really be the competitor, but Shanghai Disney, we can just buy it on an English website, buy it online, on a computer, on our phone, doesn't matter, we just buy it.
And Chimelong Ocean Kingdom. I know you mentioned them earlier, and that's a great point, that Chimelong Ocean Kingdom, which is the third major player in
still has higher
China,
attendance.
Still has higher attendance than either of these places. It's a Chinese company selling a Chinese theme park, and it's still a more user-friendly experience for Americans and Westerners than Universal Studios Beijing.
But yeah, so we'll leave that. The good news is I do want to say that they were very helpful at the guest services. Just throwing in a little good here. Yeah. We roll up there, they're like, Alipay. We showed her Alipay. They couldn't find it. They pulled their own Alipay and said, we still see it, of course, because they have the Chinese version of it. And then we went to the counter, and they let us do it. And then they had to scan our passports to match the Express Pass with our faces, which, again, everything is biometric.
Facial scan,
but it was honestly kind of smooth, and they walked us through, and it was a nice customer service experience, which I will say generally we have really good experiences in China. They've always been really nice to us. I don't know if we intimidated
or whatever. It's so bizarre that
it was a good experience.
There was very little paper trail of having the Express Pass or even having the tickets.
You just roll up,
you just walk up and show your face and hope that it scans and that you go in.
Yeah, we had no other proof of it. Actually, no, we had to print out receipts and I kept them in my pocket.
But it was that wasn't what
we never used it
to get through the Express Pass queues.
And then that's a good little thing over there. And then we already kind of talked about inaccurate queue time. So I think for the majority of our waits, the wait was incorrect. So Jurassic Flyer said 80, we waited 150.
Yeah.
Which is gross. It's almost double.
Yeah.
Then
we did Hippogriff. Actually,
that one was exactly on time, right?
It was a little bit longer, maybe.
Yeah,
so that one was 5 minutes,
right. Maybe.
We ended up
that's fine.
Yeah.
So Decepticoaster, it said 10, we waited 35.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda, it said 5, we waited 25.
Yeah.
It was significantly longer.
It was always
5 times as long as the wait time said.
Everything we rode that we actually stood in a queue for was longer than advertised,
except for Jurassic World at the very end of the day, which was quicker. And we got on quicker. And that was the only thing.
For the layout, again, so as for how our day went, after we bought our Express Passes, which was a positive experience, and rode Jurassic World Adventure without waiting in line, which was a relief. We continued over to Harry Potter, which is they're still doing like they do one-way traffic at Harry Potter, which I'm not crazy about. Sean has some good points. Sean's a fan of it, given the circumstances and considering the fact that you can enter from the front side of Hogsmeade and then exit parallel to
The Black Lagoon
Hogwarts.
And Hogwarts, yeah.
It's kind of set up like Islands of Adventure, where...
Or Hollywood's, too. It's usually one-way
Yeah.
traffic. I feel like, except for Osaka, they're all almost one-way traffic.
but I mean like the shape of it.
Oh,
like
got
the
you.
exit for Wizarding World is pretty much situated exactly the way that little bridge to Jurassic Park is at Islands of Adventure. You just exit alongside and it kind of deposits you in like the Waterworld show plaza. But yeah, so for better or for worse, they have like one-way entry, one-way exit for Harry Potter, and it's like they queue you up. Like it's still a little bit of a timed entry sort of experience to keep the plaza from getting too crowded.
But yeah, the reason I like it, and so I'm going to say it's that it's one-way traffic, is first of all, the showboat, like I mentioned, is so good. If you come from the backside, from the Waterworld side, the first thing you're going to see is a giant showboat with like a little castle on it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of going to ruin the experience. But if you come in through the front, you get the pivotal viewpoint, that the point of view that is the whole area is designed for. You walk through Hogsmeade and, Hogwarts is just hovering over Hogsmeade. Like, it's so cool. So you get that. And by doing one-way traffic, they time who's in there, who's not in there. We had time to buy a butterbeer, which I like the one in China a lot. Like the foam tastes different. It's good.
Did we ride Forbidden Journey and then do butterbeer?
We did. We still had some. We did because we had our drinks and we had Express Pass.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We
That's
wanted.
what it was.
We did Hippogriff because the wait was like 45 minutes, and we waited like 50.
And we were like, we can drink our butterbeer. We wanted to do the butterbeer. It does taste different.
Yeah, and I like it better in China.
The foam is a lot less sweet on top. It's much more of like a
and it's
cream.
much thicker. Like it is
and
a
it's
thicker
thick.
cream. Like
it's
hard
I enjoyed
to mix,
it.
really. But
it took me a half hour to drink mine. I was kind of nursing it along in the queue, but we weren't even gonna prioritize Hippogriff. Like we weren't even worried about getting the credits, quote unquote.
But since we bought the,
it just worked out timing wise. We're like, we have this drink. We're not going to be able to ride Forbidden Journey with these anyway. So like, let's do Hippogriff. Especially because like the day had already been such a disaster. We had lost 3 hours.
Yeah, at this point
on one attraction.
Yeah,
we were like, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. So it's nice that we still got to ride Hippogriff. And that it still worked with like the plan of our day because we did the butterbeer thing. But
yeah, the layout of the park, just to kind of go back to the main point, it is a little bit confusing because it's like Alex kind of describes it as like having a circle with a slash through it, almost like a no entry sign, where like you have like a circle with a slash through it. And so there's areas that are really close where you can access them. And excuse me if you already mentioned this because I can't remember, but
it's okay.
When we come from Kung Fu Panda and we leave on the south side, you are forced to go all the way through Metro Base, all the way to the Decepticoaster, and then all the way to like the Hollywood area, just to cut back up and go into Jurassic World.
We didn't actually even talk about that.
So
Kung Fu Panda and Jurassic are adjacent to each other. They're right next to each other.
So when you leave the Kung Fu Panda area on the south side, you are looking at, like we mentioned earlier, the big show building for Jurassic, but you're practically touching it.
Yeah.
And right next to it is like a little food stand inside Island of Bar. It's called Paddock 11, I think. And so they could easily build a small little walkway where like you enter Jurassic World right there. In fact, it would even make that show building not so problematic to slap a freaking Jurassic World logo on it, build a little arch, and then suddenly it's like, well, boom, we're here.
You have to go through Metro Base and then back
to the front of the park,
to the front of the park, and then around,
and then go into Island
and
Bar.
Same with the north entrance. If you're coming out of Kung Fu Panda on the other side, you have to go past the Waterworld Plaza, past Wizarding World,
past the entrance of Wizarding World, and then
you can hang a right and go towards Jurassic World. So it's like it's weird that they're just deliberately. It feels like they're just deliberately giving people the runaround.
And I think the goal is that at one point it'll be filled with attractions in the middle, where like it's going to be all these show buildings that are all back to back to back.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a roller coaster in the middle.
Yeah.
But as of right now, based on the fact that there's just massive gaps all over the park, and you can't actually get from point A to point B easily, that's frustrating. Particularly to me, that point where you leave Kung Fu Panda. And then you're right. I mean, you were right against Jurassic World. You have to go all the way through Metro Base. I mean, it's such a pain. Because it was at the end of the day, we were trying to get to Jurassic World,
Panda, which is terrible.
And it was like it was a hustle to get back. Yeah, let's talk about Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda boat ride is
Miserable.
Everything is wrong with that ride.
Terrible ride.
The area is pretty cute. We'll talk about that on our short little section of things about this park that are good. But the ride, first of all, the ride has a huge queue house that's actually decently themed. But the ride never had longer than like a 10-minute posted wait all day. And it's a Pirates of the Caribbean level attraction, or so it claims to be. And it has massive boats, like Pirates of the Caribbean sized boats, maybe bigger.
4 stations.
Like a double loading station, like a double parallel station with double load, double unload. So like this thing is built for passengers. You get on, it's like an 8-minute ride. It doesn't feel like it does very much because you move pretty slowly.
It doesn't really do anything
through the scenes. The practical effects look cheap.
The animatronics are cheap.
There's a part...
Exposed wires and
You
everything.
go up a lift hill and there's screens, and the screens are decent quality. There's one part in the middle of the ride with the screens where the screens are actually decent looking. But yeah, like you said, exposed wiring on the animatronics. Just cheap.
So what I was describing it like when we were there, it felt like they just like built the ride and they built the queue and they didn't know what to do with it. Because when I tell you this is the biggest queue I've seen in my entire life, I am not kidding. It is 2 stories of hundreds of switchbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't imagine. Like, we were laughing.
You could fit thousands.
It's so funny.
Thousands.
We were laughing because we were looking at all these switchbacks downstairs, and then we're going up the stairs. I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. And we walk up, and there's an equal amount of switchbacks. We were like, there's no way in hell they ever even filled this.
Yeah.
Because we waited 25 minutes, and we waited maybe like 1/20th, like 5% of the queue.
And the line was only 25 minutes because they had shut down one of the stations by then.
Yeah, because, operations.
But yeah.
But then the ride itself, I mean, it's just so
ugly,
cheap. I felt like they just built it and then they had to do something with it. So they put in a couple screens, and then at the end of the ride
is weird.
At the end of the ride, they built this there's this drop, right? And it goes into this dome. And the dome is a significant moment in the ride where you defeat all the bad kung fu guys.
Of
and
the whole thing.
And then the bad juju, whatever, the bad vibes, you collect them into the pot, right? At the end, isn't Poe, is that his name? The kung fu panda guy?
Yeah.
He is supposed to put all these bad things back into some sort of tube and then close it.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're on the lift hill for the final drop.
And you can see.
And you stare straight at the final scene that is not supposed to have been happening yet because we're escaping. We're we're in the middle of a fight. But what you're looking at is you're looking at Poe collecting all the bad spirits, the bad vibes
in
into
the scene
this
ahead of us.
And then you go down the drop, and then you have supposedly this giant dome with everything happening.
Bad because
it's so bad.
You get to the top of you're facing the drop, and the dome is there, but it's empty because the scene hasn't started yet. All you can see is the scene ahead of you that happens 2 scenes from now. And you're looking at this big empty dome. You go down the drop, and then the dome animates. You see the whole sequence, and then you get to the scene. It happens
almost too late because we're in the front row, and we miss all of it.
You get to the end of the dome. You exit the dome, and you see the scene that you could already look at from the top
that we
of the
already saw.
Drop. And it's like, oh, God. Okay.
And, seriously, I cannot emphasize enough how bad this ride is. It's
just
big.
So we only wrote it.
There's so much dead space.
We wanted to write it just to say that we'd ridden it, but it looked bad from the POVs, and it was even worse in person. It has to be seen to believe.
Next on our bad list, you guys are going to hate this. We're an hour in. It's not been positive yet. But I promise you, we have a list of good stuff. We're going to do a park tour. Stick with us. There's things we actually like about this place.
Yeah.
Next up is the food options in the park are very weak. Every restaurant has 3 choices. And none of them were vegetarian, which is surprising given that Beijing has a large Buddhist population and there's lots of vegetarian food around. I mean, even street food. We were in several spots. We could just there was a tofu store, a tofu spot. And by Zhaishan Park.
Happy Valley had better vegetarian
Happy Valley
options.
had veggie options.
It's not hard to find
Train
tofu.
stations had tofu stores. And then you get to Universal Beijing and it's really nothing veg at all. And I know they say online that you can go to the store and ask for a veg option. But you know what? I don't feel like trying to communicate about my vegetarian choice just because it should just be a menu option here once in a while.
Based
it's
on
weird to me.
The fact that the park is clearly an operational dumpster fire. Aside from the staff members are really kind and accommodating.
I had really good experience with staff.
But a lot of the aspects of the general operation of the park and general management of the park just was not flattering. And let's not waste valuable time. Our hotel had a big breakfast, and we ate big breakfasts every morning.
Yeah, I was included with our membership. Yeah.
I don't think we didn't eat a single thing in the park because then we ate
the vanilla layer cake, which is really
we got the vanilla layer cake.
I was going to talk about that in the next part.
That was cute. Yeah.
But we have one final... Sorry, you want to finish your thought?
No,
okay.
No, that was it.
So we have one final thing on our bad list.
The bathrooms!
The bathrooms. These were the grossest major theme park bathrooms I've ever witnessed.
They reek of piss.
Which is like, okay, we've seen it sometimes with DLP that they kind of smell a little bit because of ventilation. But no, this was terrible because it's an ocean of piss in there.
It's like...
There's an ocean of piss everywhere. Like, okay, first of all, I don't mind. I get that, like, cultures are different, and that's not I'm not coming for the culture here. Please don't misunderstand me. But in generally speaking... Like, the usage of restrooms in the Western world versus, like, China are very different. Like, you have, like, majority of restrooms are squatters, so you have to squat down instead of having, like, a seating
Chinese
one.
folks do not want to stand too close to the urinal.
Like, nothing.
And I respect
there's
that.
always distance from the urinal.
I respect that.
Which is fine. And we really don't mind that. Like, again, there's a whole different kind of, like, the restroom game is different. The problem is just, like, they're not being cleaned frequently enough. Yeah. Because, like, we've been to a bunch of Chinese restrooms and Summer Palace where we were, like, by far the only Western people I've seen. Yeah. At the Summer Palace, and that was not a problem. Even though we're only squatters, except for like one sit-down toilet, and like it was a similar setup.
And there's Chinese parks we've been to all over, and none of them were as bad as this.
But the fact that we were standing in so much piss, it was just like piss everywhere.
There was just raw piss on the floor.
Like oceans of piss. Like I don't mind a puddle once in a while because like that happens. Like in America, everywhere it happens.
Especially we were in the water world bathrooms, ironically. It was like water sports world.
Oh my god. And those are actually some of the cleaner ones. The ones at the exit of the park when we were leaving.
Oh yeah.
I mean they were so bad.
That was bad.
And again, we've been to restrooms everywhere in China. It's just not a China thing. It's a park thing. Like it is.
You remember Wuji Sunak where like the bathrooms had little signs saying
so
like,
cute.
Please walk close to the toilet.
Yeah, please don't piss on your feet.
Please no pissing on floor.
Yeah, it was a funny thing.
And it was like, man, we need some of those little Wuji Sunak no pissing on the floor signs at this
USB.
park, apparently.
And again, I don't really care if piss on the floor. I usually need something to clean
it. Just needs, I'm like, piss on the floor,
because it was like,
but
everywhere we went, it was nasty. It was just prancing around and someone just piss.
Yeah.
Imagine being on flip-flops. Gross!
Yeah, it was gross. It was super gross.
And that is the end of our ugly and bad.
Okay, we're done complaining about Universal. We're going to talk about...
For the 3 people still listening at this point.
We're going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes talking about things.
I think it's got to be more than 3 to 5 minutes. Because we have a lot on our list.
All right, we'll go off.
Okay, so we're going to start with the best thing in the park.
The
very best thing that has ever graced upon Universal Beijing. I would say Universal Beijing.
The thing of Beijing.
Because at the end of the day, I still like other activities we did in our trip more than I like
I'm just being a hype man. Tell everyone about how great the Jurassic World
Adventure Jurassic World Adventure, which I'm sure everyone listening has heard about, is probably Universal's signature dark ride besides the Harry Potter stuff. This is pre-Epic Universe, of course. But Jurassic World Adventure really is a phenomenal dark ride.
Jurassic World Adventure
phenomenal dark ride.
Is that girl.
It has a good queue, unlike Flyers. Really good queue. When you have a lot of overflow queue outside, we only waited for a little bit of that, but when we walk inside, we did this ride 3 times, twice waiting, once with the Express Pass. But once you walk inside, you have like that cone-shaped building from the Jurassic World movie, and
iconic.
Inside of it, it's like a revolving video screen ad of all the cool attractions at Jurassic World, and one of which is like Indominus Rex coming soon. Of course, that is the plot of every Jurassic World movie. Every Jurassic World ride
really has a great story arc that they foreshadow events of the attraction in the queue. Because it's like, coming soon, Indominus Rex. And you're like, oh, that's going to be cool.
And the cool thing is, so the screens are like built like panels in the ceiling. And then like everything is like something like a visual, like a vision, circle vision.
Yeah.
And so like you have these dinosaurs walking around the room via the screens
and,
as
the
like
mosasaur,
ads, you know,
swimming in circles
and like eating a shark. Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Queue is awesome. And then the ride itself uses the same system as Spider-Man and Transformers, but it's themed to having circular wheels, so like the motion of the vehicle is like back and forwards. And it's like an all 4-wheel drive, like circular globy kind of drive thing. Yeah. Anyway, the ride itself. No glasses, which is nice. It's a mix of screens and physical sets, but a heavy focus on physical sets. I would say majority is physical. And animatronics are incredible. I mean, you are being chased. I highly recommend you to look up a video on YouTube. But it's incredible.
There is a part of the ride, spoiler, there's a part of the ride where an Indominus Rex chases you. You're going in reverse.
And it's chasing you.
Trying to outrun this thing. And it chases you for quite a good time. And
for like a whole for a whole circle.
And it's just so incredibly well done. And then you finally outrun the Indominus Rex by going in reverse.
Like
and
twice,
you whip around, and you're face to face with a Jeep that is also
being
swirling around. Like they threw it in reverse and then like Fast and Furious style, like did a reverse drift that's facing you and it mirrors you as your car is doing the same maneuver. It's just such a
and that's kind of where I feel like is the halfway point of ride, and then you get to where it's a little more screen heavy, but it's great because then there's this truck where like Blue comes out, you know, the Velociraptor animatronic, really animated, and he works with the screens because the 3 other raptors and Owen
and Clara,
I think in this scene it's just Owen so far.
Oh yeah,
is like are on the screen, and then you know you have a couple screens, and you just don't look up because I will say the blending of the screens wasn't the cleanest in that part of the ride, but it's still a phenomenal ride. Don't get me wrong, just look forward. And then you get to a part where you're back in Jurassic Park. They have opened the gates to the T-Rex, and they need him to like help distract the Indominus Rex, just like the movie. So we're safe.
Yeah.
And then you get to this scene, and I'm sure you've seen it again online, but there's the Indominus Rex fighting the T-Rex, and they are like, you are in the middle of it, and they're like right above you, and then you twist around, and then the T-Rex yells at you, the Indominus Rex yells at you, and then you move, and there's a screen where the Indominus Rex is like holding on to, like going through the glass window, and then the next screen is the T-Rex knocking out the Indominus Rex. And then they could turn a corner, and
its head
in one motion,
through
the Indominus Rex crashes through the wall and comes at you like dead.
Morbid.
And then, I mean, and this is all happening while you're going through like destroyed parts of Jurassic World, so through the movie theater and through this and that.
It's genius.
And as a theme park nerd, this is the coolest effing ride.
This was one of the best blending.
Because it's dinosaurs in a fake theme park.
Finale,
the ride, like
the finale blending of the audio animatronics and the screens, which the screens are partially disguised because you're inside of a building.
Yeah,
you're
like you're you're in the movie theater or whatever, in the restaurant.
And then one of the screens, there's a lot of props in the foreground, and they blend up into the screen. So like the ride starts off. The ride has a really strong beginning, middle, and end. Like it really just feels. And the finale especially.
See my ass back in the park because the ride's so good.
It's not often you see a ride stick the landing as magnificently as this ride. Like it is that the final sequence of this attraction with the battle of the animatronics and then going behind the glass and seeing it pan out and then the Indominus like falling dead in your lap basically as you exit the building that you briefly taken shelter in. Like it is just peak. It is peak Imagineering, peak Universal Creative. Like this is it. This is theme park. This is magic.
At the end of the day, I wrote a story because it was a tumultuous day. It ended up really trending up to be a great day at the end. I mean, great day is a big word. Good day.
Yeah.
But I did post like for all of its flaws, like for all of the misses this park has. I mean, this saves it. Like this is the ride. Like without this ride, I would probably never return.
Yeah.
Unless they built something really significantly awesome. But this ride is like, okay, I'm going to be in Beijing again. I'm going to be there for work, or we're going to be there for whatever. Because you want to go back and do some more stuff.
Yeah.
Then I will probably go and ride Jurassic World because that is the reason for the season, the reason to be living, the reason to take the metro out there.
It's just phenomenal.
It is banging.
Yeah.
So there's our first really good highlight of
the next
episode.
major attraction highlight were not necessarily rides, but the live shows.
They were live shows. So I guess I want to start with Waterworld because I think the other one's more impressive. So Waterworld is really cool because it has its own land here.
Yeah, this little restaurant.
It's a little restaurant. Kind of funny because the first thing I said was like, well, canonically this makes no sense.
Yeah,
Waterworld
there would never be a land for Waterworld.
Like the whole point of Waterworld is there is no
literally
land.
in the name.
Like the world is water, and the whole point is that we're on this floating piece of scrap metal, trying to survive and trading whatever plants we have left from the times that there was dry land. But that aside, it's kind of fun having an actual land for it. Hopefully, maybe there will be an actual ride they would do for it. That's high hopes.
That would be amazing.
But the show itself, very good. I love the setup for it because they have a giant theater for it. And it's kind of nice having a land because it means there's space for it to like breathe, and there's space for... I just felt like it didn't feel rushed. And there was some really cute little Easter eggs. So there was like we live in Florida, right?
Yeah.
And Florida is the only resort that doesn't have Waterworld. And then, Singapore, Osaka, and Hollywood and Beijing do. But there was like a little road sign, the A1A, which we take the A1A all the time. Like it's right here on the East Coast by the Atlantic. So there's like a little Florida like A1A road sign that was reused, and a California license plate. Like I thought it was like a little Easter eggs to the other resorts, which I kind of thought was cute in the Waterworld queue. Waterworld's a great show. My problem with shows in Chinese theme parks, and I noticed it particularly in Universal, is that people they want to beat the crowd so bad that the show won't even be over yet, and they think the show's over, and all start getting up and run, and they run out of the stadium. But it's like there was still this is the funniest thing. There was still a significant scene that was about to happen. So first you had the plane that flies over the wall and crashes into the water, right? So people were bouncing because they're like, oh, it's the end. But it wasn't the end. There was still so much left.
You still have to set the whole stage on fire.
And then there's the fire jump. People saying, oh, the fire jump is done.
Yeah.
We're leaving. And a lot of people were leaving at the fire jump. And I was kind of annoyed because the whole freaking stadium hasn't blown up yet. The whole point of the show is the big fiery finale. And then you have the part where, the Mariner and Helen are leaving because the atoll is about to blow up. And then everything blows up. But the amount of people that left before that a big grand finale because they thought they were outrunning the crowd was kind of frustrating because we had good spots. We were the first in line. We were ready to do Waterworld. We love Waterworld, especially the Hollywood one. We love it, so we wanted to make a point of seeing it. So we were the first in line, and we were ready to pick the best seats. Right? We had great seats, but everyone getting up and leaving, it was chaotic, and it kind of ruined being able to see the show that well.
Yeah.
So that's something I kind of didn't love, and then we had the same at How to Train Your Dragon. But overall, Waterworld's awesome. Love it. Great show.
My only complaint with Waterworld is that they don't do as much pyrotechnics because of the pollution issue. So there's no fireworks in places, and they'll do the whole scene where a firework should happen, like an explosion, and it's just not there. They have the audio and everything, but it's all fire. All fire and water, but no fireworks. Yeah, so that was a little awkward. But, it's still a great show. And it was fun seeing it in Mandarin and seeing the crowd. And the pre-show was really cool. Yeah. And so the other show was How to Train Your Dragon, which I think is... Untrainable or Untameable, I think. Untameable is how it's translated. I think we're going to have... But I think ours is going to be Untrainable.
Yeah, I think ours is going to be Untrainable in Epic Universe. But great ride, because I think my favorite part is that... this is really a new generation Universal thing that's gonna happen again. I do kind of expect Jurassic World to probably be cloned because it's so good you can't leave it alone. Yeah. But if not, it's cool that it's it's a thing there. But this just How to Train Your Dragon show already know we're getting a variation here in Florida. But it was so good because you have a Toothless swinging from the ceiling. A giant animatronic that the actor is flying on, and
very
lots. Cool. It was a technologically really advanced show. Live music, all the drums were live.
Broadway type thing too. So there's action, there's singing. It's cute.
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't as long as I expected, but I don't necessarily minded that because
the theater we were in was cool too.
Yeah, you know what? Speaking of the lack of the Art Deco that we had at the park entrance, the hotel. That theater is all Art Deco. Yeah. It seemed to the Chinese theater.
It's a variation on the Chinese theater in Hollywood. It actually looks nicer on the outside. It's more detailed and dramatic.
And then the inside, it was gorgeous. Beautiful. It's very clear that they're going to use this theater for whatever show in the future. Because it is or for special events, very well for special events. Yeah. Because everything inside was very, very fancy and Art Deco-ish, and it was honestly one of the prettier things in the park. Yeah, for sure. Next up is City Walk. Really great City Walk, actually.
Yeah. City Walk was nice and had a lot to do. Lots of local chains. It was a good mix of whatever we have in the U.S. and
what a Chinese or Beijing-based chains. Mm-hmm. I like the neon application. It felt like a really modern...
Yeah, it was a good-looking
really modern City Walk, despite having a classic kind of aesthetic to it.
Yeah, it was just really well done, and it felt lively in a way... It felt lively on purpose and not lively just because it was being used as an artery.
Yeah, even though it is the artery, but yeah.
So, and it was just nicely set up between the metro station approach and the parking lot approach to City Walk. So, that's good. They set a really nice foundation with City Walk. And Bubba Gump's closed, apparently. That was one opening food option that just never caught on with the locals. So that's closed and vacant right now. Yeah, it's kind of
awkward. They just painted over the logo.
But aside from that, everything is occupied and busy and seems to be doing well.
It was nice. I will say, though, the Chinese, just they don't eat late. They don't stay out late. We didn't even close City Walk out. The park closed at 8, and we were at City Walk until 9:30 or something.
We went to Cowfish because we love Cowfish.
But girl, the Cowfish, there were 3 tables seated. They were funny. Sad we were there. It was almost awkward.
The only other locations of Cowfish are it's North Carolina based. So there's one in Raleigh, one in Charlotte, one in Orlando, and one in Beijing.
In Hollywood, I think.
No, did they open a Hollywood?
One in Hollywood, yeah. If I'm not mistaken,
I don't think they did. I think there's just 4.
I am pretty confident that there's one in Hollywood now. If I'm not mistaken.
In any case, we went to the Beijing one because it was just funny and fun to do. Food was great. They had lots of plant-based options, and I brought home chopsticks and stuff and paper napkins that have Cowfish and Mandarin and stuff on them. Back to the inside of the park. The Central Lagoon inside the park is beautiful. Like, when you cross through Hollywood and you come to a fork at the Hollywood Midway, to the left is Jurassic World and Transformers Metro Base, and to the right is Despicable Me and Harry Potter. And it is a nice reveal. It's a big lagoon. The Jurassic World indoor area and rock formation waterfall thing is really pretty. It all looks good. The park has some really nice curb appeal in places. Another thing that looks amazing is while we wouldn't necessarily say that Transformers Metro Base as a whole is like a complete success, because the area itself doesn't feel like it makes a whole lot of sense. It kind of just feels like a lot of random Transformers decorations.
It almost felt like a seasonal overlay, season of the Autobot or something.
It wasn't
it was
cohesive
weird.
or practical in a way that Marvel Superhero Island is.
Yeah, well, Alex and I were driving earlier, getting croissants, and then we were talking about how Metro Base in its concept kind of should be kind of like an adventure campus, where you go there, it's some sort of nest facility with either training or everyone comes together, but it feels like there's a complete lack of a story. It's just it's called Metro Base because everything they could possibly theme to Transformers is kind of thrown together. So you've got your meet and greet, you've got your flat ride,
and I feel
your dark ride and your coaster, but
Transformers, the ride, doesn't really invite. All the Transformers rides are on their own at the other resorts. They don't really need areas. They're it's sort of a self-contained story that exists. It begins and ends with the ride. So having a whole area with the ride, we didn't actually ride it because it's identical to the others, and it's very popular. It's definitely a big hit. That ride apparently for the Beijing audience, that ride hasn't
the longest line, right?
Hasn't missed a step. So that's it. But it just doesn't. Having that ride and then a whole area around it, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but the whole area just didn't feel like it.
I will say one thing I really appreciate about the area is, despite it feeling not really cohesive at all and kind of makeshift, they just kind of made it on the fly, which a lot of parks feels like that anyway. I will say that I liked how colorful it was and how densely. It didn't feel like it didn't feel sterile. I feel like anytime you do sci-fi,
it was pretty lively.
So Tomorrowlands are really guilty of this. It can feel a little sterile in the name of modern. It can feel sterile. At least there, it was it was a lot of small little details and things to look at, and trees.
Is fun and playful, and I think what hits that point home is the Bumblebees Boogie.
Oh yeah, in the middle of the land.
Their teacup ride in the center of the area is themed to Bumblebee, and the Bumblebee audio animatronic in the center of the ride, who DJs. In the center of the teacup ride is stunning. He is an amazing audio animatronic. Again, it's Decepticoaster, great ride. We'll talk about that more in a sec. Bumblebee Boogie is cute. Obviously, the Transformers ride is a huge hit. And they have Windblade. They have a meet and greet character that is exclusive to this park. You can only meet her at this Transformers area. She's a Japanese. Canonically, her character is Japanese, and she kind of looks like a geisha. But you can only meet her in Universal in Beijing. So individually, there's a lot of individual experiences in this area that are great, but it just doesn't mesh like you think it might, like you would hope. And then for Decepticoaster, which I was really excited for Decepticoaster, because it's sort of it's a Hulk clone of sorts. It's been reprofiled completely. It does everything that Hulk does in the same order, but everything is shaped differently. Both to accommodate the size of the trains, because this ride has unique B&M sit-down coaster trains with vest restraints that are the same as the not flying coasters, the wing coasters. So it's like a wing coaster seating arrangement, but on a normal sitting coaster, 4-cross. The track is a little wider to accommodate this. It really felt like a sit-down Banshee mixed with clone.
Yeah,
with
because
clone
it's so perfectly
Hulk.
designed that everything feels like it's to force you experience exactly what they want you to experience.
Yeah.
And while I kind of appreciated the smooth flowing motion of it, it also the engineer, I was telling Alex, I think we're on the ride. I was they engineered all the character out of it.
It's definitely more intense than a wing coaster typically is. But it's
comfortable as hell.
But
great ride.
But Hulk is like way more aggressive. But this was exactly what the park needed. It's their only coaster, their only major coaster, and it's definitely intimidating enough. But then people who ride it, I think, really enjoy the experience.
And
I love the view from the ride because there's no shoulder harness, because it's a vest, so like the visuals are nice.
Yeah, you elevate it a little bit, like you said.
And you sit up high.
Floorless, unless you're tall like me. But I will say that one thing I also would like about it is that the lift hill is of course encased by that. See, the tunnel on Hope is kind of whatever, right? Like, yeah, so it's kind of like a Devastator vibe. But then the tunnel around the lift hill, or the launch, I should say, that really is like a nicely detailed like it looks really cool. Like I will say that's like that is the entrance to the land. Inside. You can see that it's cool.
Yeah,
like on the outside, and then the noise that it makes when you come out of it, like it's a way cooler sound than like from Hulk. So I think the off-ride presence of it is actually just right. I think it's just right.
Well, I wish the Cobra Roll and Loop is such a beautiful sequence, and it dives right under the midway, just like when you enter Marvel Superhero Island. But like they've got trees and stuff planted around this ride, like. They don't want you to be able to see it.
I think the focus of this is because they want Devastator to be like this. I think they want the lift hill to be the only real noticeable thing about the ride.
Yeah.
Hulk, as in like in Orlando, the whole point of it's like over the water, the splashdown. Like, I feel like they want the whole ride to be like very noticeable, especially now because they have the theme of Hulk holding the coaster train with the broken track as the entrance. Decepticons, I think the thing they want you to see is the giant machine that spits you out.
Yeah, the ride is
and the rest they kind of want to just blend in.
A lot more hidden. Like the carousel turn around the launch, like they take it all the way down to the ground. It's not hovering over the midway and the entrance and exit like it is at Islands of Adventure. The ride is a lot more subtle in its like visibility. Also, it has a very muted color scheme.
Yeah, I like that about it.
But yeah, it's got its own unique vibe. It felt a little less. It feels a little unceremonious when you like pop out of the Devastator and do your barrel roll, and instead of like landing in the center of this focal point lagoon, you're like in between a show building and some trees. For a park that does such a bad job of hiding show buildings, they actually did a really good job of hiding this ride, and it's like 100-foot Cobra Roll and Loop combo behind some trees so that you can't see it from Jurassic World. But in any case, the ride overall, aside from...
Yeah, so you really can't see from Jurassic World.
The ride's a success overall, aside from the station, like we said, being like this weird unfinished vibe. It's a successful ride. Another thing that is largely a success, despite a major detractor, is the Kung Fu Panda area is really cute. We walked around the indoor Kung Fu Panda area a lot.
Yeah.
We went through it. We gave it a pretty thorough look because we were waiting for them to open the queue for Waterworld. We didn't want to get in line for anything and risk missing our good seats at Waterworld. So we just went inside Kung Fu Panda Land to explore, and it's a very nice area.
Very nice.
It looks cute. There's two nice round rides, a carousel and the
that was the quality the ride was. It would have been great.
Yeah, it was. It really just makes the boat ride even more of a shame because the area does once you're inside the area, it does a really good job of setting the stage.
You have to close the boat ride and restart
hyping it up. I feel like they could close the boat ride and start over because
it's so terrible.
They did such a good job with the inside area with all the lanterns and stuff. The fact that they...
Projection mapping on the tree of something.
Yeah, and the waterfall and stuff. Like there's a lot of water features.
Yeah.
The fact that they did an indoor Kung Fu Panda area was a bit of a head scratcher to me at first. The area was originally going to be SpongeBob,
which under the sea
it's going to be Bikini Bottom, so like that makes sense having an indoor area.
Though I still feel like that would have felt kind of cheap too. So I feel like this feels pretty sophisticated.
But Kung Fu Panda just makes more sense, and then it being indoors feels like an obvious choice once you're in there because it's nighttime and all the lanterns and stuff. The fact that the balloon race ride is themed to lanterns, and the lanterns have this amazing LED color pattern sequence that they do. I mean, it's really a fabulous
And that walkthrough they've got, the Kung Fu Panda trading area.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's
the kind of area where if you saw it in the daytime, you'd think, wow, this area must look so great at night. But because it's indoors, it's nighttime all the time.
Yeah.
So that actually was a huge success for them.
And then the Minion Land looks really nice too. Like the indoor area is kind of, I mean, they went for kind of like a Victorian wharf theme, so that kind of helps disguise the fact that it looks a little industrial on the inside because I think that's kind of what they were going for. And then the neighborhood around it with the Sing Show and the Minions, like the street, the Despicable Me ride, like that actually all works pretty well.
In fairness, considering the enormous success of Minions and the fact that like that's a major focal point area for the park and a huge focal point for the average Beijingers experience, I think, in this park. We walked through it after the park was closed on our way out. Like, there was nothing there that we needed to ride. We're too tall for the Loop-de-Doop-de kiddie coaster. It's a custom Jinmo Rides kiddie coaster in the indoor portion of the park, or of the area, and there's a big sign in front with, like, the height ceiling, and we're not even close. Like, we just didn't even want to, with the time constraints and stuff, it's like we didn't even want to go over there and even try to sneak our way on, like, for the credit, because it just wasn't worth our time. And we were probably going to be told no.
Yeah.
So we just walked through that area. Again, looks great at night. We walked through there on our way out and just saw like the way it was set up. And it's just it seems like a nice, well done area. It sits nicely on the water with the Super Silly Funland, boardwalk theme working nicely with the fact that it's on water. So, by our accounts, it seemed to be successful. Lots of merchandise, lots of retail space. The Minions even have their own store in City Walk. The fact that they needed a City Walk store for Minions but not Harry Potter tells you a lot about how successful Minions are. There's even a Minion merchandise vending machine in a lot of the train stations around the city.
But they do have a special Harry Potter store in the main Hollywood area, though.
Isn't it just a gift shop?
They have the main gift shop that has a whole like Potter section, and they have another that's like.
And then another Potter
kind of like that, but like even bigger focus on.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But it's always been like that. The Potter
there's just a lot of for as much storefront space is frequently dedicated to Harry Potter. There's also just as much dedicated to Minions.
And so now I want to do a quick loop around the park. We've already talked about a lot, so it'll be a decent speed. We'll start at the metro station. So you walk to City Walk, which again is very nice, and you get to the Globe, which is a great present. For a second, we thought it was the entrance because it was so busy. We thought there was queues around it. It was just people waiting to take photos.
Taking pictures.
And then you walk over this big bridge that goes by Lagoon. They have these Art Deco kind of like spiraling fountains that are really cute.
Those were cute.
Pretty clean. And then you get to the giant gardens that they just call like the gardens, whatever. But it's really just a massive queue to get into the park. The park entrance itself, I mean, it felt very dead in the middle of the day, but we went back there like 3 hours after opening to get express passes and went to Pete's Coffee, and we had this incredible like crepe vanilla cake that I would definitely get again. There was a bunch of layered crepes with vanilla cream in between, and then it was good, and we had some coffee, and it was very great. So then if you were to take a right, if you were to go counterclockwise, there's an attraction there I kind of want to do. Lights, Camera, Action with Steven Spielberg and his Chinese counterpart. I forgot his name. I'm so sorry.
This is a clone of the attraction at Universal Studios Singapore.
Yeah, so it's kind of meant to be like a Backdraft meets other kind of special effects for a smaller space.
Earthquake meets Backdraft.
But I guess because it's just like it's very space efficient, they put it there too. And that's pretty good. It's
really the one attraction at this park really at both parks. For the Asian... I guess for just Singapore and Beijing, this attraction like checks the box of the old Universal Studios
like the movie making
modus operandi of
that's Waterworld a little bit too.
Waterworld too.
And then you cross another bridge. I will say the view from over here. So they have a central lagoon which Jurassic World is kind of like the focal point. They have this mountain with the waterfalls that the Jurassic Flyers go through. Very, very pretty.
Very nice. Yeah.
I will say Jurassic World area was very nicely appointed. It was nicely landscaped. It had cool rock work. Like I will say, that was a really cool area. And then we just mentioned the Minion Land already. For the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, the one thing I kind of want to talk about is the Forbidden Journey. One thing I kind of annoys me about the Forbidden Journeys is that I love Forbidden Journey. Anyone that's listened to this podcast over the last couple of years or read all of our articles in the past knows that I'm a Forbidden Journey stan. I love Harry Potter Forbidden Journey.
Fojo junkie.
I'm a Fojo junkie. I will ride Fojo in Orlando every chance I get. However, my problem is they have now built it in 2 locations where there's no English language for the ride. And instead of it's all CGI anyway. Instead of modifying the mouths a little bit or trying to line up the speech of the different language with the characters, it is so clearly the English, and there's a lot of face-to-face time with the characters on this ride. Where they're speaking to you directly. but then it's dubbed so terribly in a different language. Both the one in Japan and the one here in Beijing. It's honestly pretty miserable how terrible it is when you ride the ride and it's like this like this Mandarin dubbing of this like clearly English mouth movement. It makes the ride really awkward and honestly a little bit dizzying because you feel like you're not really going with the, like it doesn't feel very natural. And I kind of hate that about it.
It kind of messes with the flow.
A little
bit.
So that is the one downside of that. But other than that, this Wizarding World of Harry Potter is pretty, especially if you go in with the flow that they want you to have with the flow.
They have the Black Lake.
They built a small little Black Lake, which I actually didn't realize. So that was really cute. It's not as big as the one in Osaka, but it's really nice. And we took a selfie there with our little butterbeers. And their hippogriff is cute, and they have the Hagrid's hut, and the queue for it is nice than the other queues.
The queue's not bad. I feel like they may as well have just added the Vekoma version of the ride that Japan and Florida have. But for whatever reason, I mean, Vekoma doesn't have any fingerprints on this park, I don't think. But Mack Rides did a lot for this park. So I'm guessing that it was just related to the fact that they were working with Mack on this project already, and they went with the smaller hippogriff coaster that Hollywood has.
And then one thing that was interesting about this park is they cut all the single rider lines. I guess maybe like abuse. So what they did now, I guess they were running out of lockers really quickly on the
Forbidden Journey.
And it's a one-way locker system, by the way, kind of like your like Velocicoaster here in Orlando. So what they did instead is now you have the whole queue, and then where you would usually merge in the common room for Gryffindor with the Express Pass, now instead you actually go downstairs and you follow in the opposite direction the single rider line, and then you meet back up where the entrance to the ride is, where the lockers are, and then you go up with the Express Pass people. We were so confused on the way this line flowed, but it's completely different than the other ones. Like, it's a completely different flow of the queue than the other ones, which is actually kind of creative, not gonna lie. That was kind of a good choice for them.
Yeah.
And then you have your Waterworld area, which has, your Waterworld restaurant, restrooms, some charging ports.
It's more of a plaza. It's nice that it got its own restaurant, but I feel like they needed a restaurant there, and there wasn't. It was in between themed areas.
A water ride themed to Waterworld. How cool would that be?
You may have noticed that this park doesn't have any proper water rides. The Kung Fu Panda water ride, you don't get wet. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean. They don't have like a wet Jurassic Park ride here because they have like 6 months of winter.
Well, the winter's like 3 really dark months, and then you have 3 like really bright months in the summer. So there's only like a few months a year where it's pleasant. But yeah, and then you have your indoor Kung Fu Panda area, and then you have Metro Base, and then of course Jurassic World's kind of in the middle of all of it. Overall, the park flow isn't great, but I did enjoy the park. I will say though that the amount of money we had to spend to enjoy the park, and the amount, like the management, and I don't want to like make all the management sound like they're bad, but it just felt like for a park that expensive, for a park with that name, I mean, it's Universal. Alex said, like, it's kind of sloppy. And it is kind of sloppy. There was parts I'm like, wow, this is not the premium product that were being offered. And, yeah. But I will say I enjoy the park, and I will go back if it's not just for Jurassic World.
It's been 3 years. I think now that Shanghai Disney has done the Zootopia expansion and
Toy Story expansion.
And another expansion where the coaster is imminent. Universal Beijing, even though they have a really, really strong roster as it is, the vacancies for new attractions, the big gaps between Hogwarts on either side, are like glaring to the point where I hope they fill them relatively soon. I would think that a new attraction for Universal Beijing is only a few years away, and if it's something really good, like, we'll go back when it opens and take another swing at the park. I look forward to riding the Septicoaster again. I look forward to not having to deal with Jurassic Flyers, because it's like credit and forget it.
Yeah, my only problem is right now, when I think of going back, and I know we just went like 2 weeks ago, but I'm like, there's nothing really there that I'm like, oh, I want to ride that again, except for Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Like, Jurassic World is so good that I would almost consider paying the admission price you could ride all day. Like, it's that good. Like, I cannot, I mean, you probably heard my excitement, but I cannot undershare how good that ride is. Understate that one. Yeah, it's just really
or you cannot overstate how...
Sorry, cannot overstate.
Cannot be overstated how wonderful that ride is.
Nor understated. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
So that is Universal. That's Universal Studios Beijing for you guys.
We did it in an hour and a half. That's
not terrible. We will be doing a lot more China very soon, which includes a couple Happy Valley parks, a couple scenic parks, a couple cultural experiences,
Shanghai Disney.
Shanghai Disney. We are no longer going to try and get the Giant River Boomerang in Jinjiang Action Park after 4 tries because apparently it's really done
Our
this
girl
time.
Candace, if you're listening, we love you.
She came through.
She was like, the Giant River Boomerang is
happening.
toast. So like that
is unfortunate.
That just simplifies our plans, to be honest.
But yeah, so next episode will be Universal. No, will not be Universal. It will be another Beijing episode. But it's going to be a couple of attractions and then Happy Valley Beijing, which blew us away.
Happy Valley Beijing was
my God,
awesome.
she came through.
That was... Somehow, it was a better overall experience than Universal Studios.
Talk about great staff there.
Like,
oh my God, they were incredible. That was a great experience.
How good that experience was.
So we'll catch you on that next week. Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform. We appreciate you sticking with us through our big break. We have a lot more episodes coming up now that we're doing a lot of travel for the year.
Yeah.
Because our summer is looking busy and we're just getting started.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.